Now, you're not showing a lot of interest in the victims, Madam Attorney General, whether it's Epstein's human trafficking ring or the homicidal governmental violence against citizens in Minneapolis. As Attorney General, you're siding with the perpetrators and you're ignoring the victims. That will be your legacy unless you act quickly to change course. You're running a massive Epstein cover-up right out of the Department of Justice. You've been ordered by subpoena and by Congress to turn over 6 million documents, photographs, and videos in the Epstein files, but you've turned over only 3 million. You say you're not turning over the other 3 million because they're somehow duplicative, but we know that there are actual memos of victim statements in there, and you also took down the Department of Justice's prosecution memo from 2019. So it's clearly not all duplicative, but even if it were, why not release it? Just release all the duplicative stuff. In the half you did produce, you redacted the names of abusers, enablers, accomplices, and co-conspirators, apparently to spare them embarrassment and disgrace, which is the exact opposite of what the law ordered you to do. Even worse, you shockingly failed to redact many of the victims' names, which is what you were ordered to do by Congress.
As I watched this hearing unfold in Washington, it quickly became clear that this was not going to be a routine government meeting. What started with polite introductions and formal praise for Attorney General Pam Bondi soon turned into one of the most intense confrontations we've seen in a while. The ranking member opened with a statement that immediately set the tone. He reminded Bondi that her client is not the president, not a political party, but the American people. And then he did something very powerful. He pointed to the survivors seated behind her. These were victims connected to the Jeffrey Epstein trafficking scandal, and he made it clear that, in his view, they were being ignored. From where I sit as a presenter covering this story, this was the moment the hearing stopped being political and became deeply personal. The focus shifted to victims, accountability, and whether the Department of Justice was truly serving the people. But then the accusations became even more serious. The ranking member accused Attorney General Bondi of running what he called an Epstein cover-up, claiming millions of documents were withheld, names were redacted to protect powerful people, and victims' identities were exposed. Those are explosive allegations, and when words like cover-up are used in a congressional hearing, that immediately raises the stakes. And the hearing didn't stop there.
Some of the victims had come forward publicly, but many had not. Many had kept their torment private, even from family and friends, but you published their names, their identities, their images on thousands of pages for the world to see. So you ignored the law, and even with over 100,000 employees at your disposal, you acted with some mixture of staggering incompetence, cold indifference, and jaded cruelty towards more than 1,000 victims raped, abused, and trafficked. This performance screams cover-up. Convicted sex trafficker and groomer Ghislaine Maxwell opened the gates of hell to Virginia Giuffre and hundreds of other victims, as Virginia recorded in her remarkable book, Nobody's Girl. But when Maxwell was subpoenaed to come testify before Congress, you and Todd Blanche quickly moved her from a higher security prison to a minimum security camp in Texas, where she's enjoyed 5-star treatment, including catered meals, private gym time, and access to a therapy puppy. All because Todd Blanche, who's utterly failed to investigate the monstrous crimes of Epstein and Maxwell's co-conspirators, spent 9 hours with Maxwell and satisfied himself that she would have nothing untoward to say about Donald Trump, which is your only real interest in the matter, based on institutional performance. But abandoning victims and coddling perpetrators is what you do best. When the FBI opened a criminal investigation into the brutal killing in Minneapolis of Renee Good, a poet and 37-year-old mother of 3, by Trump's masked paramilitary ICE agents, you shut it down. You claim you're investigating the cold-blooded murder of Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse at the VA. But how can we trust the administration when the president and Kristi Noem called Preddy a domestic terrorist and Stephen Miller called him a would-be assassin? Not only do you refuse to share evidence with the state and local investigators and prosecutors in Minnesota, you have blocked their access to the crime scene and the evidence. How are you seeking justice for Marimar Martinez, the Montessori school teacher in Chicago who was shot 5 times by a Border Patrol agent who bragged about it on text? Or the family of Keith Porter, a father of 2 shot and killed by an off-duty ICE agent in LA? Or the family of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, shot and killed in Illinois minutes after he dropped his kids off at school? There's no sign of any movement at the Department of Justice. You even launched a criminal investigation into Renee Good's grieving widow. How sick is that? But it's even worse. You've turned the People's Department of Justice into Trump's instrument of revenge. Trump orders up prosecutions like pizza, and you deliver every time. He tells you to go after James Comey, Letitia James, Lisa Cook, and Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve Board, and members of Congress like Adam Schiff, Mark Kelly, Alyssa Slotkin, Chrissy Houlihan, Jason Crow, Chris DeLuzio, and Maggie Goodlander, to name a few, and you snap to it. You replace real prosecutors with counterfeit stooges who robotically do the president's bidding. Nothing in American history comes close to this complete corruption of the justice function and contamination of federal law enforcement.
The discussion expanded into claims that the Department of Justice was being used to target political opponents of Donald Trump, including figures like James Comey, Letitia James, and Jerome Powell. Now, whether these claims are true or politically motivated is something investigators, courts, and history will ultimately decide. But in that hearing room, the message from the ranking member was clear. He believes the justice system is being turned into a political weapon. One of the most striking parts of the hearing, from my perspective as someone reporting on this, was a mention of prosecutors who resigned rather than follow orders and judges who reportedly criticized the Department of Justice in court. That suggests there's not just political conflict happening, but legal conflict as well. By the end of the opening statement, the ranking member made one thing very clear to Attorney General Bondi: do not waste time, do not dodge questions, and do not turn the hearing into personal attacks. He even referenced what he called a burn book from a previous Senate appearance, a binder allegedly used to attack political opponents.